Senate Committee Room, A305. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, A305. Did you know that you can watch the Senate live on YouTube? Visit the channel by browsing to youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. That's youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. Senate Committee Room, A305. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, A305. Did you know that you can watch the Senate live on YouTube? Visit the channel by browsing to youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. That's youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. Senate Committee Room, A305. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, A305. Did you know that you can watch the Senate live on YouTube? Visit the channel by browsing to youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. That's youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. Senate Committee Room, A305. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia.
Let's move.
Where's Scott seat?
I don't know.
One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. Do we have a quorum?
You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Okay, here's the good news. Okay, the Finance Committee has pared down the list of bills they need from us. So these are the bills that will be heard, and we've kind of made an executive decision between a long night on Friday when we've already had a long day, or a long night on Monday, and we're going to have a long night on Monday, okay? So the bills that will be heard today will be 917, 964, 1401. Those are Servell, Carol Foy, Lucas. 1021, Servell. 1114, Van Valkenburg. 1190, Deeds. 1434, McPike. 1332, Morrison. 1373, Suderline, which is going to be struck at his request. And 1447, Pekarski.
And then Celine.
Okay, and 919, Celine. And the Pekarski bill, I think, is going to have to be referred to Herc, so we won't have much discussion about that. But 919, Celine, a bill we'll take up. Does everybody understand? No, those are the bills that are going to be heard. The other ones will be heard on Monday. And as I said, that'll leave us 33 bills for Monday. So we'll have a long night then. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, can you repeat those numbers for?
Okay, the bills that will be heard today are 917, 964, 1401, 919, 1021, 1114, 1190, 1434, 1332, 1373, and 1447.
Bingo.
That will be our agenda. Okay. Mark, you weren't.
It's fine, I got home.
To the extent that we have a list of we have patrons that aren't on the committee that are out there. Senator Salim is out there, so we can hear him on 919.
just doing the green ones.
We're doing the green ones plus Celine and these two birds, Van Valkenburg and Pike. That 1114 Van Valkenburg.
And that McPike.
Pike, yeah. Okay, 919, turn your attention to Senator Celine.
Mr. Chair, Senate Bill 919 and the members of the committee requires that governing bodies or transportation district commission of any county or city that contracts with private companies to provide transportation services to require such.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry,
Senator Rouse.
I can't hear.
Is the
Is the mic
Well,
on?
I think it's the audience. If people could,
Okay, please, I'd ask you to be quiet so we can hear from the speaker.
Mr. Chair and the committee, Senate Bill 919 requires the governing body or transportation district commission of any county or city that contracts with a private company to provide transportation services to require such company to provide any employee of such company providing such services compensation and benefit that are at minimum equivalent to the compensation and benefits provided to public employees as defined in this bill, requiring equivalent qualification, and if a county or city within such transportation district has adopted an ordinance or resolution authorizing collective bargaining by employees of such counties or cities, requires such company to enter into and adhere to the collective bargaining agreement. In short, this bill just requires that the private companies that localities hire adhere to collective bargaining and pay their employees equivalent benefits to the public ones.
Okay, so private companies that run public systems have to adhere basically to the terms that the public systems operate under? Is that what you're trying to accomplish? Okay. Are there questions for Senator Celine? Okay, 3 minutes per side. Are there those who would like to speak in favor of Senator Celine's bill?
Those online who would like to speak in favor of the bill, please raise your hand. Is there any,
You may have gotten the Friday folks that left.
you didn't get any reinforcements, huh?
I did not.
Are there those who would like to speak in opposition to Senator Celine's bill?
Those online who would like to speak in opposition to the bill, please raise your hand.
Okay, if you're in the room, come on up. You got 3 minutes, okay? Okay, yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, James Hutzer, Virginia Association of Counties. Appreciate the senator and staff for hearing us out. We oppose the bill. We believe this raises transit costs, and it's also a collective bargaining mandate. So we respectfully oppose the bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Sky Riggleman with Americans for Prosperity, we also oppose the bill just simply because of the collective bargaining aspect, making it harder to budget, and those fees will be passed on to the taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, please.
Good afternoon, Chair Deeds, members of the committee. I'm Tiffany Robinson, Director of the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation. We're opposed to this bill because it is going to increase costs for our public transit providers, which will be passed on to taxpayers through additional local contributions or fare increases. We're also opposed because we believe this will decrease competition by limiting the pool of contractors willing and able to provide these important services to the public. Most importantly, this bill creates an enormous administrative burden for the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation. We would need to produce new guidance documents and regulations, taking into consideration that jurisdictions may now have conflicting requirements, as well as complex and changing wage calculations. We would need to tailor our monitoring and enforcement mechanisms to each grantee, which would be a burden on my staff and an added burden for our grantees as well. The bottom line is that we believe this bill would lead to diminished transit service at a higher cost, causing more people to drive their cars, and that's the opposite of our goal. So respectfully, we're opposed to this bill.
And I apologize, I was distracted, but who'd you say you were from? Where?
Robinson, the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dr. Emily Yen. I'm with the Virginia Caucus of Rank and File Educators. This is a large priority for the Amalgamated Transit Union. They have seen many times in Northern Virginia where they've unionized and a private company is really doing unfair bidding, and this is really service of the transportation to the general public as well as to the individual drivers. This bill, the House version was supported in the House Labor Committee yesterday, and this is just a really big deal in terms of public service. So I hope that you support this bill.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else that needs to speak to this bill? Okay, the bill's before the committee. If one person online. Okay. Give you 30 seconds. Yes.
Danny Power, turn your camera on and unmute yourself.
Good afternoon. To the committee, I'm Danny Plogger with the Virginia Transit Association. For a handful of reasons, but primarily because it could result in a 10% or greater increase in the operational cost for our transit agencies during a time of constrained local, state, and federal support, resulting in higher fares or reduced service impacting the most vulnerable Virginians. Transit employees hired through a private contractor already have access to collective bargaining, and many, if not all of them, are already members of the ATU.
Oh, I'm sorry, Danny. Did you say you were for or against it?
The Virginia Transit Association opposes this legislation.
The Transit Association opposes. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else in the room that needs to be heard on this? The bill is before the committee. If the motion is to, if you like the bill, it has to be reported and re-referred to finance. All the bills heard today.
Question.
Senator Morrison's got a question. Who do you want your question for?
Senator Salim, if I could ask a question, is this in a situation where a county is replacing or augmenting existing transportation staff? Because if they were coming up with a transportation group de novo, that it didn't exist before, it would be hard to kind of know what their salaries would be. But is this more designed at augmenting and replacing existing public employees?
Mr. Chair, Senator Marsden, it is not to replace existing employees. What this simply does is it allows, if you're a transportation district or counties who have collective bargaining agreement, to request and put in a contract that the private employees that they're going to hire be offered similar pay and benefits.
Does that complete your questions? Okay, are there any other questions for Senator Salim? Senator Servell.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I have a question and a motion. So, or I guess a statement and a motion. I mean, basically in Northern Virginia, you have a lot of these localities that have outsourced a lot of their transit operations to these third parties, so they don't have to treat them like they treat their own employees, and it just ain't fair. And they ought to treat these transit workers just like any other government employee. And I think that's all the bill does. I think it's a great idea. We've seen numerous strikes up in Northern Virginia now because of the way these people are getting treated. And I think it's a great idea, and I'd move to report it.
Report and re-refer to finance. Been motion made and seconded. Unless there are other motions, please open the roll.
Ayes 9, no 6.
Ayes 9, no 6, so the bill goes to finance. 1447 from Senator Pekarsky is also on the docket, and that's a bill that mandates blood pressure prescriptions, I think, but for payments by insurance companies. We can't really, it has to be reviewed by the HERC, and so I think what's in motion is a motion to pass the bill by indefinitely with a letter to HERC. Okay, all in favor of that, please open the roll. And Pekarsky, she knows, Senator Pekarsky knows what's going to happen.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Suderline's here? bill is set 1373. He's requested that that bill be stricken. So, motion and a second to strike Senate Bill 1373 is open the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
As 15, no, 0. Senator Morrison, you want to do
Hey,
13?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Servell.
Thank you. I just got a message from Pekarsky. There was supposed to be some kind of amendment on her bill before it got referred. I don't know if it's really necessary or not, but.
I don't think it's necessary. I
Okay,
think
got it.
we can include that amendment in the letter to Herc. Okay,
Okay.
Senator Morrison's got 1332. And I understand that this is a historic meeting of the minds.
This is Mirabile Dick 2, Senator Deeds. This is,
Arlington County and the Towers, even. A marriage made in, I'm not sure where.
yeah, this is it. We do have an amendment, a technical amendment in concept that if, Tom, I understand that you can report what that is, and then it will be formally structured at a later time, but all the stakeholders are in agreement with it. Is that your understanding? As far as I know, if it was drafted, it's, and you did it, it's good, so, well. Okay. All right, we're in good shape.
If the bill is, if it's reported out here, it has to go to finance.
Right.
So you can do any sort of fixing, you have to. If you can't do it here, you can do it in finance.
What we have here, Mr. Chairman, we have an amendment, the SEC report that was written last year based on a budget amendment that came out of the budget in 2022, 23. The SEC report written last year found that a rate of $210 appeared reasonable. The bill authorizes localities to negotiate up to a maximum of $210 instead of $150 and does not change the minimum, which I believe is $135. The $20 fuel charge stays in place until such time as the locality adopts a new ordinance. This legislation preserves all consumer protections and all local regulatory authority. The bill allows localities to set trespass tow rates using their current process in between the range of $135 and $210. Mr. Chairman, we seem to have agreement from all the parties here, and I'll take any questions.
Well, I'm assuming, since I was accosted out in the hall, that the towers and the counties are all right. And unless somebody has to be heard on this, I'll entertain a motion. Need to adopt a substitute, okay.
Move to adopt the substitute.
Yeah.
Okay, a motion to adopt the substitute has been seconded. All in favor of adopting the substitute, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the substitute's before you. A proper motion to be report and refer to finance.
So moved. Second.
Okay, unless there are other motions, please open the roll. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a uniter, not a divider.
Thank you. Okay, we've got Senate Bills 917 from Servell, 964 from Carol Foy, and 1401 from Senator Lucas.
Yes.
And we have them, basically, they're collective bargaining bills.
Yeah.
We've got a substitute that puts all those bills together, that takes all the terms of all three bills and puts them together. So does any of the patrons want to speak to the bills?
I'm happy to present the omnibus if that's.
We got an omnibus substitute, and I'd entertain a motion on that substitute.
Move the substitute.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of the substitute, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the substitutes before the committee, I would, Senator
Chairman.
Carol Foy, Senator Servell, you want to?
Well, I think you need a motion to incorporate the other two in.
Okay, I
technically.
want to incorporate, we put it in, on the bill as 917, which is Senator Servell's number, which is the low number, but Senator Carol Foy is, as a chief co-patron, and this includes 964, it includes 1401 from Senator Lucas as a chief co-patron. All in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, no, we need a motion, I guess, to do
So
that.
move, Mr. Chairman, that you incorporate those three.
We're incorporating 964 and 1401. It's
Yeah, it's on
going
the
to
board.
917.
Going to 917.
It's on the board.
You can't?
What? Yes. Yeah, we got to record incorporation of each bill into, and, Mr. Chairman, we need to incorporate
Needs to
each
be
bill
two
into mine.
actions.
Okay, so
Need to be two
964 into 917, I've had a motion and a second, so we have to open the roll. On 964 into 917.
Correct.
We're going to do those two first.
We'll need to open the roll for on those two, and then we're going to put in 1401. Okay, those bills are incorporated. Now I need a
I
motion.
have another motion,
to
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
I move that Senate Bill 1401 be incorporated into now Senate Bill 917, which is already incorporated Senate Bill 964.
Is there a second to that motion? There's a second. So we'll have to open the roll to incorporate 1401 into 917. Now we've got 917 before.
I mean, hold on. I'm pushing, well, let me do it on this side. He did it, but it went away.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Okay, we've got 917, 964, and 1401. Senator Carol Foy.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My bill 964, the collective bargaining, individual home care providers. This bill will actually ensure that home care workers have the ability to organize, have a collective voice on the job, and advocate for better care. We know that Virginia is facing a home care workforce crisis that is driven by low wages, no access to many opportunities, and other workforce supports, and the inability for home care workers to have a collective and unified voice in the system. We know that there are multiple workers, and actually a shocking 49% of home care workers in the state are on public assistance. Because of these conditions, people with disabilities and seniors across the state are finding it increasingly difficult to find workers that can provide the services they need to remain in their homes and communities rather than in institutionalized settings. We know that we have a even more aging population. There will be more need for the back-breaking, thankless work that home care providers do. One of the least things we can do is pay them what they're worth and ensure that they have a voice on the job so they have safe working conditions, benefits, they can retire with dignity, and have all the things that all workers aspire for. So in Virginia, we are one of the best states for businesses, but we also need to be the best place to live, work, and raise a family. And in order to do that, we don't want our workers to be exploited. And now is the time to have a collective bargaining for individual home care providers, and that's what this bill does.
Thank you very much. Senator Lucas, I'd like for you to present maybe some ideas for 1401, which has been incorporated as well. Then we'll turn to Senator Servell, and then we'll turn to questions or discussion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the VPFF urges the Virginia General Assembly to pass the Firefighters and EMS Employee Corporation Act. Firefighters and emergency medical workers face dangerous conditions every day while fighting fires, responding to vehicle accidents, and caring for critically ill and injured patients. Unlike private sector and federal employees, firefighters and emergency medical workers have no federal or state protections for their rights to collectively work with their employers to improve working conditions and operational readiness. Cooperation enables firefighters, paramedics, and their communities to confront budgetary constraints, staffing challenges, and shortages of PPE. Numerous studies in other states have shown that when firefighters and emergency medical workers collaborate with their employers, their communities have lower death rates, more effective fire and emergency medical services, safer working conditions, and improved wages. Altogether, this involves employee recruitment and retention, which is a critical challenge for Virginia's fire and emergency medical services, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator Lucas. Senator Survell.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Speak to the policy of 917.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So now that we've had these bills incorporated into it, basically what the bill does, it's a master bill that basically creates collective bargaining for all state and local government employees in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Just to walk, it's a rather big bill, and I'm going to walk everybody through it really quick without getting too much into the details. But lines 115 to 121 create a right to collectively bargain. Lines 122 to 38 lay out the exemptions, who's exempt, which includes elected officials, confidential employees, which are defined, officers, leadership, the judicial branch, patients working at behavioral health units, and legislative employees. Lines 139 to 208 creates the board that manages the whole thing. There's two management, one local government, one teacher, and one from the public who ends up chairing the bill. They're all appointed by the governor for 3-year terms. Lines 182 to 208 has their powers. 209 to 106 has powers of employers. 217 to 272 has their duty to negotiate. 273 through 307 has prohibited conduct. 362 to 410 has the rules about bargaining units. There are 17 bargaining units under this bill, including a bargaining unit is taken from Senator Carol Foy's legislation for home health care workers who are not state employees. 411 through 456 has rules about who to determine the appropriate representative is if there's a dispute about who represents a particular unit. 520 to 590 has to do with impasse. 606 to 612 is judicial review. 613 to 619 has to do with strikes. It does prohibit strikes, and it also prohibits lockouts when a dispute exists. 654 to 89 is an arbitration procedure that applies only to firefighters and EMS workers. That's part of Senator Lucas's bill. And then there are some enactment clauses at the end that basically say it does not affect any existing collectively bargained units. It also repeals the card check law and also repeals the law about local option. So that's what the bill does comprehensively. I think it's mostly there. Might need a few more tweaks and edits to get there. It's been a lot of people have input into this, but that's basically what the bill does. It basically establishes a right to collectively bargain for all state and local government employees unless they're accepted, which I talked about a minute ago.
Okay, I want to get to questions in just a little bit, but first I want to give, say, 5 minutes aside for people that want to speak to these combined bills. What we did basically is put the policy from all three bills into one. So people that want to speak in favor, you have 5 minutes.
Those online who wish to speak in favor of the bill, please raise your hand.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I am Leslie Houston, president of the Fairfax Education Association, representing thousands of educators who recently made history by ratifying our first collective bargaining contract in nearly 50 years. This wasn't just a document. It was a testament to what's possible when workers have a voice. It brought better wages, improved conditions, and fairness for educators, directly benefiting 180,000 students. Collective bargaining isn't just about negotiating contracts. It's about recognizing the dignity of every worker. It's about giving them a voice to say, we matter, our work matters. When educators finally had the right to bargain, we transformed our schools and our communities. Imagine what home care providers could achieve if they had the same chance. Imagine the lives that could be changed, their own, their families, and the people they care for every day. That's why this bill is critical. It streamlines the process, providing clarity and statewide standards to help all workers. This isn't just about educators. It's about home care providers, predominantly women of color, who do essential, invisible work, but are denied the right to advocate for themselves. Collective bargaining gives workers a voice, ensuring respect and fairness for everyone. Mr. Chairman, it's time to stop leaving workers behind. Let's pass this bill and build a commonwealth that values every worker. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Next, and I'd ask you, please, you got 3 minutes for the whole bunch of people standing up.
Yes, sir. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm Andy Case, and I'm a teacher from Williamsburg, Virginia. And I'm speaking in support of this bill because my fellow teachers in Williamsburg, we did the hard work of organizing around workplace conditions, and only to have the school board decline our petition for collective bargaining. I know that some will say that this bill makes superintendents and school boards' jobs more difficult, but they need to do the hard work. I tell my students that the good usually does not come without good work, without hard work, excuse me. So please pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Sophie McGinley, Labor Policy Analyst with the Commonwealth Institute. I support this bill, and I want us to recognize that we're only able to participate in this democratic process today because public employees write reports for you to read, maintain this building, ensure our safety, lead our state agencies, and support meetings. Yet these same workers who enable our democracy are denied democratic rights in their own workplace. The Department of Human Resource Management's latest report reveals state employees are paid 13% below market rate, reaching 28% below in some agencies. Research shows that private sector workers earn 29% more than public sector workers with similar qualifications, and DHRM itself describes their compensation system as critically distressed and reactive. These disparities particularly impact women and workers of color who make up a significant portion of our public sector workforce. But this isn't just about worker rights, it's about government efficiency and smart use of taxpayer dollars. With collective bargaining, we can see reduced turnover costs, better service delivery, and improved workforce safety that prevents costly incidents. We all benefit when our public staff have a voice in making government work better. I urge you to support this bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Less than 90 seconds now for the remainder.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Doris Krause-Mays, President of the Virginia AFL-CIO, and we stand in support of the bill.
Thank you much.
Chris Countryman, Loudoun County Education Association. We in Loudoun jumped on the opportunity to collectively bargain when the law changed, and we struggled for 3 years just to get the resolution adopted. Public Employee Relations Board established by this bill will streamline that process, and it will allow school districts to embrace collective bargaining regardless of the size and resources that they have.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am.
Jennifer Pike, on behalf of the Virginia Professional Firefighters and our over 10,000 members, and we strongly support this.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Emily Yen, speaking on this bill as a proud member of the United Campus Workers of Virginia. Right now, university workers are amongst the ranks of state workers who perform vital public services, but have been categorically denied collective bargaining rights. Thousands of contingent academic workers are contending with housing security and have no access to employee-sponsored dental insurance.
Okay, thank you much, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You probably just have time to identify yourself and your group.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeannie Robinson, and I want you to take the time to hear my story. I'm a caregiver for my grandson and proud member of SEIU Virginia 512. I'm also a retired daycare licensing inspector in Pennsylvania and proud member of SEIU Local 668.
Yes, ma'am. We're at the end of our time. Just tell us that we understand you're for it. Thank you, ma'am. Just come on up and identify yourself, and if you represent a group, identify your group.
Charles Skelly, Richmond Building Construction Trades, we support.
Thank you, sir.
Patrick Brigham and IBW 666, we support.
Thank you.
Don Slabert, IBW Local 26, we support public employee collective bargaining.
Thank you.
Jason Asher with the Mid-Atlantic Pipe Trades and the Virginia Building Trades Council, we support.
Okay, thank you.
Kayla Mock, United Food and Commercial Workers Union, Local 400, strong support.
Thank you.
Carol Bauer, Virginia Education Association, we support.
Thank you.
Eli Weinger, Students for Equity and Reform in Virginia, we're supportive of this legislation.
Thank you very much. Now we have 5 minutes for people that are opposed. Come on up. Oh, no, I'm sorry. First, we have to deal with the online world, virtual world. We have one person. You have 30 seconds.
James Hart, turn on your camera and turn on your microphone.
Please turn on your camera and your mic. 30 seconds.
All right, Jimmy Hart, I'm a public service worker. I strongly support the bill. You'll notice any senators who are voting against this bill will be the same ones who vote to suppress workers' power at every single turn. And if you look into who their biggest donors are, you'll start to understand why they do that. That's all.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, 5 minutes for people that are opposed. Come on up.
Those online who wish to oppose the bill, please raise your hand.
Okay, sir, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm John Suswick. I'm with Virginia Professional Educators. And we have concerns about SB 917, and I'm speaking specifically about local school division employees. First, the bill sets up a public employee relations board, or PERB, that would make collective bargaining decisions in place of local school boards. We believe local school boards, which are elected or appointed within their communities, are better qualified to make collective bargaining decisions than an agency in Richmond, which in many cases would be hundreds of miles away. We also are very concerned that SB 917 would in some instances abolish, or in many instances abolish a secret ballot election to choose the exclusive bargaining agent. Secret ballot election is the American way, and it is needed to ensure a fair and transparent process free of intimidation and coercion. Virginia's teachers and other education employees deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Sky Riggleman with Americans for Prosperity. We're in opposition to the bill mainly because it takes power away from the localities to partner with their employees individually. We have letters from several localities, including Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, and Lynchburg, saying that they were against it. It also puts severe strain and puts at severe risk volunteer, EMS, and firefighters because collective bargaining often neglects them. And so for those reasons, we're opposed to it.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Next.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Jeremy Bennett, representing the Virginia Association of Counties, VACO. As previously stated by my colleague, we have a long-held position in opposition to mandatory collective bargaining, and I'd encourage you all to take a look at the local fiscal impact statements. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. Next.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Stacey Haney. I'm here on behalf of the Virginia School Boards Association. My association also has a longstanding position in opposition to collective bargaining. I would echo the reasons of the speakers before me, and I would add that school boards in particular, there is an additional issue with this legislation, which is that binding arbitration applicable to school boards violates Article 8, Section 7 of the Constitution of Virginia. It's been decided by the Supreme Court of Virginia in the cases School Board versus Parham from 1978, I believe. And so we believe that there's an additional constitutional problem as this bill applies to school boards uniquely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, are there questions for Senator Survell, Senator Lucas, or Senator Carol Foy?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McDougal.
Mr. Chairman, draw your attention to line 138. It says exemption, employees working for the legislature of the Commonwealth. Why, if it's good enough for every local government, every state government employee, is it not good enough for the employees of this body?
Senator Survell, you want to take that one?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I think that one of the issues with regard to our employees is they're currently subject to the budget. Right now, the benefits that we're allowed to offer are limited by what's chiseled into stone in our state budget. And it's kind of hard to negotiate, for example, benefits when the budget doesn't allow benefits, for example, for our second staffer or for any other staffers that we hire. And so I think the complexities associated with that are too much to put in this bill. That's part of it. And I also just think that, let's leave it at that.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator McDougal.
Mr. Chairman, isn't that the same issue that local governments and other state governments? We have a lot of individuals where we list their salaries in the budget that are not exempt. There are a bunch of salaries in the state budget that are not elected officials or members of boards of commissions. Every cabinet secretary, every agency head, every deputy agency head, all those are in the budget. What makes us different and special than those other local governments?
Is that a rhetorical question or a real question?
I want to know.
Okay. Senator Survell or Senator Lucas or Senator Carol
Thank you,
Foy?
Mr. Chairman. What I would say to the senator is that, first of all, the logistics of altering a local budget are a lot easier than they are a state budget. Localities meet. Well, localities meet year round. We're not a full-time job. We come here and do this 45, 30, 60 days a year, and then we walk out here and we're done. And whereas localities are in session all year round. I mean, they obviously adopt the budget, but it's a lot easier for them to go back and do amendments and change things the year round because they meet, if not weekly, they meet monthly. So they have a lot more flexibility. With regard to, I'm not clear if the question was in general in regard to legislative, but our budget does not set forth the salaries for our aides. it sets forth the maximum amount that we're allowed to pay them for our number one or number two. And I suppose we could chisel the exact salary if we wanted to, but I haven't heard anybody clamoring to do that. But anyway, I don't think that it's a well-founded concern with regard to legislative employees.
Mr. Chairman, speaking to it.
Oh, yes, sir. Senator McDougal has the floor.
Mr. Chairman, as we go through things, if we are saying that our local government that has to deal with the budget that we appropriate to them, that we give them, that we debate, and local government that we meet for either 45 days or 60 days, our local governments typically meet for once every other week. That would put them meeting at approximately 26 times a year. So that would put us meeting double to triple the amount that they're meeting. Certainly, if they can figure it out with the limits of the budgets that we send them, then we should be able to figure it out. I think it's just really, I think it's really disingenuous to say everybody else in government's got to do it, but not us.
Okay, thank you, Senator McDougal. Senator DeSteph.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure who this question would be directed to, but if I can draw your attention to line 209 through 215, it says, unless limited by the provisions of a collective bargaining agreement, which tells me a collective bargaining agreement can limit the direction of work, the hiring, promotion, assigning, transfer, demotion, suspension, discharge, or termination of employees. And Mr. Chairman, I think that when we have a union through a collective bargaining agreement directing the work, the hiring, the promotion, the assignment, the transfer, demotion, or suspension of a public employee, that we may have a problem, but I'd like to make sure we address that and ensure that's the actual intent that is part of this bill.
Okay, I don't know if everybody heard. You sounded either like you had something in your throat or you've got a mic. Your mic's not working.
Mr. Chairman, I'm losing my voice.
I'm sorry. Did everybody understand Senator DeSteff's question? It was about
Start on line 239.
40.1, 57.8. Who wants to respond to his question?
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer his question.
Senator Servo.
I don't think there's anything, in terms of how collective bargaining normally works, I don't think there's anything unusual about this section. It basically says that people are allowed to collectively bargain hiring, promotion, assignment, transfer, demotion, suspension, discharge, termination conditions, qualifications of employment, et cetera. And this just basically says that unless the collective bargaining agreement deals with that, the localities retain all those powers. And, it's often to see in collective bargaining agreements, minimum qualifications for employees. You often see disciplinary stuff, when you can hire and fire somebody, when you can promote somebody. That's what things, those are things that are normally collectively bargained. So I'm not sure what the concern is here.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Senator DeSteff.
So to follow up on that, Mr. Chairman, my issue is a local government has to be able to set a budget, and they have to have a balanced budget. So how can they balance a budget if they're not in charge of hiring, promoting, assigning, transfer, demotion, suspension, discharge, or termination of employees? What's to stop a local government employee union through the collective bargaining agreement for hiring 500 people? And then the city would have to pay for it.
I think Senator Servel's argument or response would be that this is language similar to laws in other states where collective bargaining is available for local governments, and they manage. Is that close to what your response would be, Senator Servel?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Servel, then I would say that if they've got a balanced budget, they must have a challenging time trying to do that when they can't control their labor costs.
This man needs some tea with lemon and honey.
We got some back there.
And bourbon, yeah.
Moonshine, honey, 10 seconds.
There you go. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I want you to feel better. Senator Peake.
Yes, speaking to the bill, no questions. Obviously, this bill is going to pass the Senate, and it's going to pass the House. I don't think this current governor is going to sign it.
He might.
But I don't think he is. But next year, so I'm asking the tens of people here and the millions at home watching on TV at 5:30 on a Friday night. 2025, please take a picture of your real estate bill and your car tax bill. Take a picture for 2025 of that bill, save the bill, keep it, lock it away for just 2 years, because if we don't have a Republican governor next year, this will pass. This will be the law of the land, and in 2 years after it's implemented.
Did he just say we're not going to have a Republican governor next year?
Yeah.
I think he's making a prediction. I don't know.
If that happens, take a look. Take a look if that does not happen at your bill, and we'll see in 3 years. I represent rural counties and have the entire time in the Senate. I can't tell you how many people from New Jersey, Philadelphia, New York have come to live in our counties, and they say, we came down here, there's so much, and they're firefighters, teachers, police officers. They say the property taxes are so much lower down here, we can't afford to live where we are now that we're retired because our property taxes are so high. This is the path to driving everybody out of our state to retire somewhere else.
Motion to report and re-refer to finance. Unless there's another motion, open the roll.
Did I get mine?
Ayes 9, no 6.
Okay, the bill is reported and re-referred to finance. 1021 from Senator Surville.
I have a sub on that, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, there's a substitute. Motion that's been seconded to adopt the substitute. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The substitute's before the committee. And it's being distributed right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I've got one.
Okay, everybody's getting a copy of the substitute. Turn your attention to Senator Surville, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 1021 is a recommendation of the Commission on Electrical Utility Regulation, and it basically is intended to simplify and strengthen our existing IRP program that Dominion conducts every year and adds AEP back in. The bill requires, as written, Dominion and Appalachian Power to develop IRPs every 3 years instead of every 2. They have to submit annual updates in the years in between. The bill also requires the SCC at least once every 5 years to consider eliminating planning orders that are no longer needed. They've given us a listing of, I think, about 140 requirements the SCC has sort of layered on through the years, and that many of them are sort of outdated and need to go away, and the bill requires them to look and see if there's anything they can eliminate. The bill also brings Appalachian Power back in to develop IRPs again. They were exempted from it 2 years ago. And then, most importantly, it makes IRPs more useful by requiring Dominion and APCO to both pick their preferred mix of energy sources that complies with the Virginia Clean Economy Act. And it also retains their ability to look at least cost scenarios that might involve petitioning the SEC to keep carbon-emitting facilities in use. It also strengthens information sharing and public engagement in the planning process by requiring annual stakeholder engagements to be facilitated by a third party. Right now, they're not facilitated by a third party, they're just stakeholder meetings. Dominion and APCO also are required to share their modeling software with the other participants so that they're able to sort of gut check their own scenarios and try and figure out a lot of this stuff in advance to sort of minimize conflict in the planning process. Importantly, the bill also, the existing IRP process only looks at generation. This bill requires in the IRP transmission planning. So in consideration of, what are those, the advanced semiconductor things, like what do they call those things? GETs, whatever GETs are.
Senator Surville, could you speak to the differences between the bill as introduced and the substitute?
No, just APCO. I'm trying to remember what the changes were made. APCO requested a couple changes that were made. I think they wanted the IRP process to start a year later for them, I think, instead of right now. I think they wanted a year to get ready. And Ms. Kinzer might be able to identify some of the other changes. I don't remember many others.
Okay, I think there's some questions for you down here. Senator Obenshain, you have a question?
Yeah. I'm looking at line 155 to 156. My recollection, and I may be looking at something that is different from what I recall discussing, but my recollection was that we did not, in the commission, limit Dominion and APCO in terms of the modeling scenarios. I thought that we said in the commission that they should include at least one modeling scenario that meets the total energy savings targets required. Here, we've reverted back to what I thought was the position that we rejected, saying include only modeling scenarios. So we're not even permitting them to come forward with alternate modeling scenarios that may benefit the interests of reliability or cost. Am I misreading this or misremembering?
It's on line 155.
No, I know he's referring, I know Ms. Hearn's here from the commission, the executive director's here. She might be able to articulate what she recalls we approved. I agree with his interpretation as to what is in this current draft as to what it says.
Ms. Hearn, do you have can you answer that question?
Good afternoon, members of the committee, Mr. Chairman, Senator Serville, Senator Obenshain. Yes, and I have our staff expert on hand with me as well, Jamie Bitts, and I believe this is a question that staff from the State Corporation Commission can answer as well. But this is an area where there's a fully litigated proceeding relating to this topic, and so we feel like this is already well documented, and the case materials point to the fact that this can be determined to have this particular modeling scenario that meets the energy savings targets. So those are well established and well engaged through a stakeholder proceeding at the commission on its own, even separate from the IRP.
Follow-up
Senator
question.
Obenshain.
I'm not sure I understand that, but are you saying that indeed they're not allowed to offer alternate scenarios that do not meet the energy savings targets?
Is this something that you want to speak to, Jamie?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, Senator Obenshain, the language that is in the draft now does limit the ability of utilities to model scenarios that do not comply with the energy savings targets. Those are determined currently by the SEC through a fully litigated process. And the energy savings targets then are in the form of SEC orders. And so to ensure compliance with those previously issued orders, we limited the modeling to the scenarios that meet those orders.
Further question.
Senator Obenshain.
Isn't this in conflict with what the commission voted to approve?
I don't, Mr. Chairman and Senator Obenshain, I don't believe this particular piece has changed since the version adopted at the commission. So, but I may not be looking at the substitute language. So maybe council could advise on what was voted on January 6th compared to this version that you're looking at today.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Senator Obenshain, the only differences between this substitute and SB 1021 as introduced is on line 172 of the substitute. It says beginning in 2026, that was 2025. The second change is on line 175, adding the sentence beginning the year after a phase 1 or phase 2 utility files. Beyond that, they are identical.
And Senator Serville, you said that the change on from 2025 to 2026 came at the utilities' request.
APCO's, yeah, and Ms. Kinzer, well, Senator Obenchain was asking questions, she showed me the changes. There were two changes made. One pushed APCO's year for filing their IRP out. I know. And the other one, the other change said that APCO has some document they have to file every year. I forget what it's called, but it exempted them from filing that whatever they're currently required to file like this year or something. So as they move into this process, it took away one of their filings or something. And those are the only two changes. Mr. Chairman, I would just say, I just pulled up the CEUR meeting materials from January the 6th, and this language that Senator Obenchain's referenced is what is in the version that was posted on the website. I cannot remember in the meeting whether we had dialogue that resulted in that being changed or not, but it's at least consistent with what was presented to the commission.
Yeah, and it may very well be consistent with what was passed or recommended that last meeting. I guess what I'm remembering are the discussions in which I thought we had agreed to change that.
I suspect that the tape will tell that. I'm sure Ms. Hearn can go back and look at it. We can figure that out in the next, assuming this bill moves on over the weekend.
Are you finished?
For now.
Okay, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm reading this bill, and in the contents, that is, it starts at line 116 and 56-598. In the contents of the integrated resource plans shall include, and jumping over to line 133, that over the long term, the utility will continue to provide reliable service at reasonable prices that take into consideration the social cost of carbon. So I'd ask the patron, what is this, and I plead ignorance here, what is the social cost of carbon, and how does that relate to the provider providing reliable service at reasonable rates? How can they accomplish that while at the same time taking into account the social cost of carbon?
Mr. Chairman, what I would say is that I believe one of the provisions of the Virginia Clean Economy Act related to this, if you look at 56-585.1 of the code, it required the State Corporation Commission to consider the social cost of carbon, and also I think it required them to do a proceeding, if I'm not mistaken, to determine the social cost of carbon as part of a litigated proceeding. And I can't remember whether they've done that or not, but part of that is trying to make sure that we are taking into account, and the Commission's taking into account, the externalities associated with carbon pollution when they're deciding what specific technologies are in the best interest of the Commonwealth, whether it's solar, wind, nuclear, or other things, including, by the way, approving additional gas or coal facilities if it comes to that. So right now, they don't have a clear, or before the VCEA, they did not have a clear statutory mandate to do that. Now they do. And the point of the IRP is to make sure that that variable is taken into account in the planning process so that everybody has a clear signal as to what the plan is going forward when they litigate future proceedings when they want to propose a new project.
Okay, Senator Stanley, was that, are you done, or you got more questions?
That's in the current code.
I think I'm going to quit while I'm behind on that one. So
Okay,
thank you.
Senator McDougal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, looking at lines 189 through 195, that section, it looks to me like right now the commission establishes an order of what's in the IRP, and now we're taking that authority away from the commission and saying that the utilities can only file a single preferred portfolio of generation and can't give options. It's two things. Are we taking away authority from the commission, one? Number two, are we requiring that only one option can be filed?
Well, Senator McDougal, look down on 193. It has to consider options for maintaining and enhancing rate stability and energy independence from imported fuels and price volatility. Is that?
Mr. Chairman, on line 191, it says it eliminates all the language from order from the commission above, 189 through 191. 191 says each IRP shall identify a single, which is one, preferred portfolio of generation.
Okay.
Transmission, distribution, infrastructure needed to do these items. So there can't be multiple options. It's just got to be one. So before the commission was established an order, this seems to say, commission, we're taking you out of that role to send the order, and utility, you can only give one option. Isn't that true?
Senator Surville, do you want to tangle? Kerry?
Mr. Chairman, I would say I think that requires constructing this sentence in connection with other parts of the statute, because I think we just noted that there's a different part of the statute that allows them to model a least cost alternative in addition to one that meets the VCEA. And so I think you have to sort of read it in broader context. And I also know that there's, again, another provision of the bill that asks, it might even be the enactment clause, that asks the commission to look at trying to reduce court-ordered, some of the 140 currently ordered provisions that were required in IRPs, which to me is a nod that the SEC has authority to order additional things, I think if you were to interpret it as a whole. So it looks like Ms. Hearn has walked up to the podium for some reason.
This is Carrie Hearn from the sewer.
Yeah, good afternoon.
She doesn't smell like it.
Commission on Electric Utility Regulation, and this component is really asking the utility to express their preferred case. So they're enabled to model multiple scenarios, and we give them that flexibility. We do ask for particular types of scenarios to be modeled, but in this reference, we're simply requesting that they do express of the various models, of the scenarios that they model, which one is their preferred scenario. So, and that, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Senator, this has been a point of, there have been multiple options presented in the past, but it's been unclear which one is the preferred portfolio that the utility is really operating from as they're moving forward in their business.
Okay, Senator McDougall, does that complete your questions, or do you?
I have an additional question.
Okay, Senator McDougall.
Mr. Chairman, so how is this going to reduce the cost of power to the ratepayers?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Surville or Carrie Hearn?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Surville.
I don't know. I think that I've never quite understood exactly what beg the question means. I hear it's often used a lot, but I would say that the bill requires the State Corporation Commission it requires IRPs to be filed and then only approved if they achieve the goals that are set forth in code at a reasonable and prudent cost to the ratepayers. And so the SEC's mission to continue to try to accomplish these statutory goals in a way that minimizes cost to the ratepayers is what the entire objective of this is. And I would just note, just to give you, for example, one of the reasons we have the social cost of carbon in here is because carbon emissions and climate change cause a whole lot of other costs that people pay in other places. And part of what the SEC is asked to look at is how can we avoid those types of expenses by dealing with them here. And so it all is considered as part of the mix. It's complicated, but the one sole objective of the SEC and the IRP is not to produce electricity at the absolute cheapest cost possible, regardless of how much climate change it causes. That's not the point, and which I think the question kind of assumes. So that's the best way I think I can answer it.
Senator
Mr. Chairman, I certainly understand a goal for being environmentally conscious, but I also, when you're looking at models, if you only put one portion of the equation in, you're going to get one answer. And I would love to see in this process, as there are lots of things that require this item to be considered, that item to be considered, there should be a model that says this is the best model to ensure the least cost to ratepayers. And then we could all know, and we could all know what decisions we're making, but that doesn't seem to be baked into the mix.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Surville.
We just went over language that says the utility is allowed to model a least cost alternative. We just went over that language like 10 minutes ago. So they're allowed to do that if they choose in their proposal.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McDougall.
We require them to do everything else. Why wouldn't we require them to do that? If we're really concerned about the ratepayer,
Chairman,
why would we leave that as a may, why wouldn't we have that as a shall, like we've put the shall for every other item?
Senator Serville.
Well, I know right now there is an SEC order that requires them to do it, and until the SEC rescinds that order, they're going to be required to do it. So, I mean, if the...
Okay, well, I think we've reached the point where we can hear the fors and againsts. So 5 minutes for the people that want to
Those
speak in
online who
favor
wish
of
to
this.
speak
and
to the
5
bill, please raise your
minutes
hand.
for those who want to speak against. Anybody for this bill? You got 5 minutes total. Time's a wasting.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Josephus Allman with the Southern Environmental Law Center. I'm also a citizen member on the Commission of Electric Utility Regulation and the subcommittee that helped work on this legislation. We think these are vital reforms to the IRP process that will allow stakeholders more access, that will provide our commission with better modeling results on how to plan for the future as we transition to a clean energy economy. Thank you. We support the bill.
Okay, thank you so much. Who's next?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'll be brief. Blair St. Ledger Olson with the Virginia League of Conservation Voters, and we support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next.
Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee, Jim Purical from Advanced Energy United. We support this bill, and we look forward to working with the patron and the commission and making it strong.
Very much. Next.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Trias Lockwood representing the Chesapeake Solar and Storage Association, and we support the bill. We appreciate the comprehensive approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Lillian Anderson with Virginia Conservation Network, and we also support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Paige Westlink. I represent the Sierra Club Virginia chapter, and we support the bill.
Okay, thank you very much. Next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Peter Anderson with Appalachian Voices. We intervene in almost every single IRP. We think the changes are great ones. We support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Victoria Higgins, Chesapeake Climate Action Network Action Fund. We support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Tanisha Griffin with New Virginia Majority, and we support the bill as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Dana Wiggins with the Virginia Poverty Law Center. We typically don't intervene in IRPs because up till now, honestly, we've seen them as being widely useless because they're supposed to be a planning document, but then we do lots of other things that throw that out the window. And so our goal, our hope is that by taking a more comprehensive approach, we're actually going to be able to see and do real planning, real comprehensive planning across the entire grid, not just each utility territory on its own, so that we're, as a state, we're actually looking at how we can make sure everybody has equitable access to energy and sustainable energy to be able to do all the things that we need to be able to do. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Murray with Dominion Energy. We support the bill, continue to move forward. There's a lot of meritorious things in the bill. We do have some concerns about maintaining flexibility. An example of why flexibility is good, in our last IRP, we had some very significant EPA regulations, and we could argue either way whether those were likely to stay in place or not. Given when we first started doing IRPs, shale gas was just starting to emerge as a resource, which changed the economics of gas. So to the extent the General Assembly wishes us to model any particular thing, we are happy to do that. And or the commission orders us to do any particular thing, we would like to retain some flexibility. But we do think this is overall a meritorious bill. Look forward to it moving forward and continuing to improve. I will add this caveat about IRPs generally. They're a snapshot in time. They're a very useful planning exercise. It's not Soviet bloc central planning. The IRP is not permission to build anything. It is not denial of permission to build anything. It's a snapshot in time, best analysis on today's technology, today's prices, today's options, and it gets done now under this bill every 3 years.
Thank you, sir. Are there others in favor of this bill? Okay, we've got 5 minutes for those who want to speak against the bill.
Those online who wish to speak against the bill, please raise your hand.
Please come up.
Mr. Chairman, Glenn Davis, Virginia Department of Energy. There's a couple reasons the administration's against this bill. I mentioned two of them. First is the arbitrary nature of a social cost of carbon. I would also bring the committee's attention to the part of the Virginia Code that I think was Senator Serville mentioned that mentions the social cost of carbon in there. That existing part of code mentions a working group at the federal level. Trump's recent EO disbanded There may be a very big problem with trying to tie the social cost of carbon of this to a federal group that no longer exists. Secondly is transparency, Mr. Chairman. By not requiring the least cost alternative, we don't know what the true cost of the Virginia Clean Economy Act is to the ratepayers. For example, we know that there is expected to be, in 2026, that Dominion will have expenses related to forced purchases of RECs, totaling about $450 million. And over the next 5 years in total, by 2030, that number will be $2 billion approximately. We know that because of the cost of ASEA. What we should know is how much more ASEA is costing the ratepayers, and the only way to know that is to have them file a least cost alternative well, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there others? Okay, the bill's before the committee. If you want to report the bill, it has to go to finance.
Briefly, can I?
Senator Obenshain.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, let me just say very briefly, the commission undertook this, and I thought that at the beginning of the commission proceedings that the goal was to simplify and expedite a very expensive and onerous process, and instead we're adding requirements, we are adding transmission and distribution in the IRP process, and I would point out that we are passing along a lot of expense to the ratepayers. This is a very contentious process, involves a great deal of effort and expense on the part of the utilities. We're also bringing in APCO, which is also struggling right now with its rates. The cost, the added cost, it gets passed along to the ratepayers as well. So I would hope that we would dispense with this.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Surville.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say, with regard to the administration, I appreciate their feedback. I don't remember hearing any of that in any of the proceedings that we had at the CUR where they were allowed to testify, but we'll just note that the Dominion and Discovery responses filed in terms of this deficiency payment said they expect a deficiency payment of $7.5 million. So I'm not really sure where $450 million is coming from. But in any event, we also just note if we deleted any of the 140 requirements that the SEC currently have, from my perspective, we would be directing the SEC again, how to do its job, and we didn't do that. We basically went to the SEC in this bill and said, you tell us if any of your 140 orders can be, eliminated, and they're going to do that. That simplifies, reduces the filing burden on this, and so instead of us presuming to know which of the 140 need to go. So I think the bill does accomplish the goals we articulated. We need to get transmission into the planning process because of all the planning that's going to change because of how we're going to use more solar and wind and everything else over the next 10, 20 years. So I think the bill needs to move forward.
Okay. Okay, unless there are other motions, I'll open the roll.
This is the report finance.
That's right.
Ayes 9, noes 6.
Okay, the bill will go forward. The last set of bills, there are 3 bills, and I think there's a substitute for Senate Bill 1190, which is my bill, but since it contains it will end up containing the terms of 2 other bills. I would hope someone would move the substitute. Okay, we got a motion and a second to adopt the substitute. All in favor, say aye. Senator McPike can talk to it, but we need a motion. Do you want a motion before we incorporate?
Mr. Chair, I was going to suggest if the position of the committee is to incorporate the other 2, would be to have those bills up and incorporate it into yours, and then take up the substitute, and then cover the material of the substitute.
Okay, I apologize. I took the wrong order then. So do I have a motion to incorporate Senate Bill 1114 into Senate Bill 1190? Okay, is there a second? Okay, open the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Okay, Then do I have a motion to incorporate Senate Bill 1434 into 1119? And enlist Senator McPike as the chief co-patron of this bill. When, as well as Van Valkenburg. Yeah, I meant to, yeah. Okay, a motion to incorporate Senate Bill 1434 and list McPike as the chief co-patron. Please open the roll.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Okay, ayes 15, no zero. The bill's incorporated, and all those chief co-patrons are there. I understand there was a group in this building till about 11:30 last night working on the bill. Carrie, do you want to present the findings? Do we have the substitute? We have to adopt a substitute now. Okay, with motion and okay, all in favor of adopting the substitute, say aye. Opposed? Okay, the substitute's before the committee now. And Carrie Hearn will walk through it.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good afternoon. My name is Carrie Hearn. I'm the Executive Director of the CEUR, the Commission on Electric Utility Regulation. And first, I'd like to thank Senator Deeds and all the members of the CEUR, including Senator Obenshain and Senator Surville, and many of the other bill patrons that have been working on this topic for many months. This relates to solar energy siting and permitting, as well as energy storage facilities, and the goals that we have as a Commonwealth to meet our growing energy demands, and the land use goals at the local government level, and the opportunity to look at how are we siting these facilities with the best interest of the localities, the communities, the regional planning areas, as well as our state policy goals. And so Senate Bill 1190 was introduced as a commission-endorsed policy recommendation to help address these interests, and looking at conservation, agricultural interests, local land use decisions, and many other benefits and challenges in part of this discussion. So today's substitute continues with that mission. We were in the building until 11:30 last night, I can verify, and we've been working on this for, like I said, many months. We have dozens of stakeholders, several of whom are represented here today and can speak for themselves in terms of where they are at this moment. But this would bring together both state, regional, and local energy planning, connecting existing local comprehensive plans with new regional energy plans that are all informed by data-driven modeling and stakeholder inputs to the Virginia Energy Plan, which is our current state comprehensive energy planning process. And so this bill updates the Virginia Energy Plan requirements. It creates that model for the regions, and it creates certain dates by which we're requesting for the localities to meet these goals with us. So it lays forth a framework, it creates a technical assistance center, and I'm happy to answer any questions on the bill.
Well, the big picture, this bill does not tell local governments what they have to do. They just have to help develop a plan. And there's some regional planning, there's technical assistance, but nobody is really telling anybody that they have to do anything here.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Correct.
Senator Surville.
Mr. Chairman, I was wondering, first of all, I appreciate all the work that's being done on this, and as it continues to be a discussion, as we continue to get feedback from people. Ms. Hearn, can you also confirm this does not contain any requirement of a model ordinance?
Correct. That was addressed in Senator Van Valkenburg's bill, and so to the extent that you all can clarify if that content rolled in or if that was left behind, then that would answer that question, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah,
Senator
the answer is
Marston.
no, I think, right?
Does not include model ordinance language.
Right, that's all I was asking for. Yeah.
Senator Marston.
Thank you. The community planning process, of course, timing is everything. And, what is the usual, in your experience, the usual length of time it takes a community to come up with these comprehensive plans?
So the local comprehensive plans are due about every 5 years, and so that is the frequency that they're on. But they're working on those plans, over time, and this sort of jumpstarts that process and then asks it to continue forthcoming.
Mr. Chairman, further questions?
Senator Morris.
Thank you. Carrie, so if a developer and a landowner, wanted to approach local government and they said, well, we're we just finished our comprehensive plan, so come see us in another 4 or 5 years, is that a potential outcome?
We do address that in the bill, Mr. Chairman and Senator Marsden. So on page 5, lines 121 through 126, this is the language that says, while this planning process is underway, we ask that those denials are not made by that reason. There can be any other reason for denials, but we ask for those application denials to not be due to the fact that planning is underway.
Okay, thank you.
Senator McPike.
And it's on, thank you. Sorry, the button was not working, Mr. Chairman. I just want to speak to some of the effort. I think there's a lot of concern that I know members of this chamber and probably down the hall as well had in terms of having an approach that was heavy-handed, and this bill does not do that. This is really more providing the technical assistance across the state, being supportive, and really is more built in around incentives, which I really appreciate. I think anything else would have a little bit more concern, I think on a bipartisan basis on committee levels. And I know the stakeholders have been working really hard to get this, and I understand the substitute is maturely a lot of what was in my bill, and then also the technical assistance in universities from yours, Mr. Chairman. And I think is a positive step forward, and to really get some assistance in the technical needs that localities need when evaluating some of these projects. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, can I highlight a piece of the bill that Senator McPike put in originally that we have in our bill as well is about creating those moments where opinions can be provided to the local government during their decision-making. So that is in this substitute bill.
Okay. Senator Peake.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And a question either to the patron or the proponent, or to the patron, the witness, or counsel. I am looking at lines 121 through 126, and really line 123, and it says they shall not deny a solar plant factory without a reasonable basis. And so what happens if they deny it without, and who determines whether or not it's a reasonable basis? And B, what do they do if they find that it is not a reasonable basis?
Mr. Chairman and Senator Peake, is that question for me?
It's for whomever can answer it.
I think the bottom line is that's got to be determined. If somebody wants to file suit, a court will determine whether there's been a reasonable basis.
Okay, it will lead to a lawsuit.
That's not defined. Reasonable basis isn't defined in here, I don't think.
It says, well, line 125 and 6 says what shall not, what is an unreasonable basis, but.
It just says what shall be considered an unreasonable basis. It says that an incomplete energy plan pursuant to such and such, a regional energy plan pursuant to such and such, or a comprehensive plan shall be considered an unreasonable basis for project denial.
And so then, Mr.
If it's incomplete.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, or somebody, does this, and this might be illegal, then does these lines 121 through 126E, I mean, did they grant a solar factory a right to sue? I guess they create a cause of action in this bill against a locality if the locality doesn't grant their solar factory petition. That's what it looks like.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Peak, I would have to consult with legal counsel on that question.
Serval, you're on the list first. Have you already spoken, or?
I had a question. I just wanted to say one more thing in the vein of what McPike said, but I just wanted to, speaking to the bill, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to point out that we had an extensive dialogue at the CEUR. I know Senator Openshain made some very passionate remarks about some of his concerns about the legislation that came out. I would just hope that it's noted that a lot of people were listening to that, and I think probably 90%, if not 100, maybe at least 90% of what Senator Openshain was concerned about in that hearing is out of this. There's all the stuff about people can't litigate, only 2 people can litigate, standard review, all that stuff's gone. So I think a lot of the issues that have been causing consternation are out of this bill. This bill is mainly just a technical assistance, a little bit of planning, and a little bit of model, a little bit of some very light restrictions on ordinances. That's about all that's left in this. And I would hope that we could find bipartisan kumbaya on this, because I think it's a bill that I think will facilitate reasonable discussion on this and allow our localities to process these projects with the expertise that they needed, that the help they're asking us for. So I hope we can adopt it on a bipartisan basis.
Okay, thank you, Senator Openshain.
Mr. Chair, thanks. And I do want to compliment the stakeholders who worked on this. It did address a lot of the issues that we talked about at the commission meeting and removed a lot of the mandates. I remain concerned about the framework that we are setting up in here, and it's not very difficult to envision the advisory committee recommendations becoming advisory committee mandates, which was the recommendation of the commission. And it's not a very distant path to be traveled before we get back to that. But right now, one of my questions, though, and that was thank you, first of all. I do appreciate the progress that was made. The center referred to in line 268, that center is, I think that's the one that is allowed to accept appropriated support and private support. Or am I wrong there? Or is it there's so many different.
On line 266, it talks about appropriated funds and accept monies from federal or private sources for carrying out the purpose.
Thank you. My question is, we had some discussion about transparency. The private support that's provided, is that going to be transparent?
Mr. Chairman and Senator Openshain, yes, you can look at lines 285 and 286. The center shall provide an annual report summarizing research activities and sources of funding to the Commission on Electric Utility Regulation on or before November 1 of each year.
Senator Openshain.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm a little uncomfortable with the word summarizing. We heard from the solar group at UVA who presented to the commission, and they indicated they were receiving private support from some foundation. We asked them who, and they refused to identify the private entity that was funding their work, and it just creates a potential for significant conflict of interest unless they were required to specifically identify the sources and amount of private funding. If they are receiving 90% of their private funding from one entity, that would be a big problem to me. And we're a sunshine state, and I think that in this respect as well, they ought to be required to very specifically identify both the source and the amount. So I would so move.
So if we summarize research activities and detail sources of funding, something like that.
To identify the sources and amounts.
I have no objection to that.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to it. And I guess we can figure out the words when we get, if we don't get them right here, we can iron them out in finance if we're going to get that far. Do you understand the amendment and concept?
Yes, sir.
Do you want to adopt it? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We got Senator Obenshain's vote now. Senator Morrison is next on the list, then Senator McDougal.
Just one question. I'm a big fan of structured decision-making instruments. And would it be difficult or impossible to create a scorable tool when you're looking at these advisory opinions so that the regular person could kind of look at it and know kind of where it stands in terms of other plans or whatever? Is that inconsistent with what you're trying to do?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Marsden, thank you for that request or suggestion. And I think the staff at the state agencies are probably in a really excellent position to be on this board, whether it's the directors or their designees. And so I certainly trust that they will come up with a good decision-making framework. We request that they provide opinions every 90 days, or meeting quarterly, and so certainly would expect them to have a solid process in place for implementation.
Mr. Chairman, I would just love to see an
Senator
instrument
Morrison.
that had a numerical rating and what have you, so that people could get a concept of how these different siting situations can be evaluated and be able to kind of judge for themselves what the differences are, as opposed to getting lost in a bunch of verbiage. Thanks.
Okay, Senator McDougal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, looking at line 127 through 131, because this is a newly created code section, it indicates that the plans the local governments must adopt include regional energy production targets pursuant to a code section. What are those targets today?
I can't tell you what the targets are. I can explain a little bit about some of the groups that wanted this language. There was concern primarily from representatives from rural areas that unless we had a regional aspect of this, the more urban, more populated areas would not have a role to play in the development of these sources of energy. I mean, that was what led to the inclusion of this language. But the targets, I guess, Carrie can speak to, or somebody else.
Mr. Chairman.
Are they written down somewhere?
Senator McDougal, these are targets that are established through data-driven modeling in the Virginia Energy Plan in 45.2-1701, I believe it is.
So, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman. So,
Senator McDougal.
And so that's the point on line 161. It says land availability and cost. So what it looks like to me that's going to happen is our local governments are going to have to adopt the targets for regional energy production that are based on land availability and cost. If you're in Fairfax County, you have no land availability and the cost is very high. If you're in King and Queen County, you have a lot of land and the cost is a lot less, and so they're going to be forced to build on rural areas, and they're not going to have any choice. So I realize that we're trying to say that this is not putting mandates on rural areas, but I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing that the language is saying you have to consider availability and you have to consider cost, and if you consider those things, even on a regional basis, It has to be in rural areas and can't be in urban areas.
Senator McDougal, I certainly get your point. I think that's this is one of the very issues that kept people here till 11:30 last night. But they can speak for themselves. I'm sure they will. But Senator Pike has a point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think if the senator would read on, it does read, the approval of renewable energy projects in the regions, locality, but this all takes into context historical, cultural issues, forestry, agriculture. Like if you read on through that paragraph, it is scooping in all those issues that I think we're all concerned about for every locality to figure out that right fit. And so that is a really important one, and it doesn't have to do with just energy generation, but also energy efficiency, right, and combinations. And so there's a lot of different dynamic things that I think localities can do to tackle this, and also in consideration what fits. And I think that's why it's written as such, to understanding there's a lot of different variables that a local board is going to have to look at.
And
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McDougal.
I'd ask the senator, how does that cite any solar in Fairfax and not only in rural areas? I don't see how this language does anything but force solar to be in rural areas and takes away that decision from local governments, because you're going on all factors, including land and cost. And there's zero way that a urban area, a developed area, can have lower cost and more land than rural areas. It's just forcing it. You're not saying it's forced there, but every metric is putting it in rural areas.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Surville.
Unless McPike wants to answer.
I thought the question was to me, but
Go ahead.
you can jump in. I mean,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'd
Senator
say
Pike,
to the senator that it's distributed by planning districts. So the planning district's going to have to figure it out. We have different planning districts with different topography, different conditions. Every region is going to have to roll up the sleeves and work through this. It's not a one-size-fits-all, and that's the beauty of this bill, is exactly what we did want, is saying from the state level, it's a one-size-fits-all. The planning district area is the right place to do it, to understand all the different dynamics things. So, Mr. Chairman, I think that's why exactly his questions, the right reason why this bill is constructed this way.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator McDougal.
I feel if the senator would say that there be equal amount of solar sited in each planning district, I would totally agree with your argument. But right now, that's not what it says. It says you have to take in these cultural, land, and cost factors. I don't care if it's by planning district or by individual jurisdiction. Planning District 8 in Northern Virginia does not have land at a rate that you can purchase and at a number where you could site solar versus anywhere else in the rural part of the state.
Okay, Senator Surville.
Mr. Chairman, the statute is way more complex than what Senator McDougal's focusing on here. You note on lines 159.
Which line?
If you start on 159, when they have to set these targets for energy efficiency, distributed generation, shared utility, offshore wind, battery storage, it has to look at land availability and cost. That's one variable. It also has to look at the region's proximity to energy infrastructure. And if an area is not proximate to infrastructure, that means it's less desirable for that. And one of the beautiful things about solar and distributed solar, shared solar, is that you can put it on rooftops because things aren't maybe close to the big transmission line. You can put it over a big parking lot. I mean, you could put solar panels all over the Dulles Airport long-term parking area. You could put all over the big shopping centers in Northern Virginia, and that's something that could be considered as part of this. So it's not that. I don't think it's as simple as the senator makes out. Distributed generation is part of this, and it's clearly part of this. And distributed generation means all over the place and not just big, massive solar fields over farm fields.
Mr. Chairman, would the senator entertain an amendment that says the solar has to be proportional in each planning district across the Commonwealth?
Mr. Chairman.
If he really believes that it's going to be on Dulles and rooftops in Fairfax, is he willing to put that into the language so that one jurisdiction is not required to put more solar than others?
Senator Surville can certainly answer that question on his own, but I don't know that that's a practical.
No, it's not practical. It also runs counter to the senator's articulated goal of providing energy at the cheapest cost possible. I mean, if you want to have some of the most expensive solar we could have something like that. But I think we need to leave that up to the system to figure out instead of mandating that we're going to, drop X percent in certain places. For whatever it's worth, I mean, Plain District 8 is a very small land area compared to the rest of the state. It's not quite that simple.
Okay, I think we are at the part of the discussion where we're going to hear from people that are in favor and people that are against. So
Those online who would like to speak to the bill, please raise their hand.
5 minutes for people that are in favor of the bill.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jay Ford with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. We have participated in 3 different working groups on this where these concepts have continually bubbled up. I appreciate Senator McPike for helping refine some of the ideas and the members of Sewer and yourself, Senator Deeds, for what we have before you. It is truly a compromise. We heard what people's concerns were about the timeline for regional planning and have responded to that with a much quicker turnaround. We also heard concerns about the shadow of preemption that were in earlier versions, and what is before you is a carrot-only bill to make the whole of Virginia work on this topic. And that was really important because we did not want a bill that was focused just on the concept of utility-scale solar in rural Virginia. We wanted everyone rolling up their sleeves to think about this issue and how they're going to contribute. And with the advisory opinion, we think that's going to help local governments think through these projects as well. So we thank you all and hope that you will pass the legislation.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Josephus Allman with the Southern Environmental Law Center, also a citizen member on the Commission on Electric Utility Regulation, a subcommittee that helped with this long process working on this bill. And I think where we've landed here is a really good compromise that balances local control over their decision-making, but also the interest of the Commonwealth in achieving our clean energy goals on the schedule that we laid out back in 2020. So we would urge you to support this bill.
Thank you very much. Next.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Blair St. Ledger Olson with the Virginia League of Conservation Voters. We would like to thank Senator McPike, Senator Deeds, and Senator Van Valkenburg, who is no longer here today, for working so diligently to bring these concepts together to a place that, as Mr. Ford said, truly represents a compromise and a carrots-only approach. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, good afternoon, and members of the Commission. Jim Purical from Advanced Energy United. It's worth saying that Advanced Energy United is a technology-agnostic trade association, too, that represents over 100 members. And while we know that we can't continue to keep kicking this can down the road, it is an important issue. And while we do have some concerns with the language, there are parts in this that we do support. And we're committed to finding a solution that continues to develop more solar and storage projects while also working in good faith with localities. We today provides us an avenue in a bill. Your vote today will provide us an avenue for a bill vehicle to continue those negotiations that we have been discussing and we have been conducting, and we see this as a step forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'm Paige Westling. I'm with Sierra Club Virginia Chapter, and we support the bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Trespass Lockwood representing the Chesapeake Solar and Storage Association. We still have significant concerns with the bill as drafted, but we will work to continue the conversation. Appreciate the time. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Nikki Robner with the Nature Conservancy, appreciate the work by the people who negotiated this. This is a step towards what we really need, which is localities getting help to think through their obligations to get to our clean energy targets. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Kyle Shreve on behalf of the Virginia Forestry Association. We appreciate your work, Mr. Chairman, Executive Director Hearns, as well as Senator McPike, to bring these concepts together. We have been consistent all the way through since the Commission started looking at this and years past in finding a balance between conserving our forest resource and working lands and being able to achieve our renewable energy goals. While we're there yet, we came to the table in good faith. We believe this is a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Martha Moore, Virginia Farm Bureau. We were part of the discussions. We do believe that this is much better than some of the other versions of the bill. We would encourage some of the discussions to continue.
we share some of the sentiment of making sure that everybody in the Commonwealth helps to achieve this goal. So thank you so much for your help.
Thank you for participating. You know this is a process. It's going to probably change a lot more as we go on.
Mr. Chairman, Brad Copenhaver on behalf of Virginia Agribusiness Council, similar to Ms. Shreve and Mr. Shreve and Ms. Moore. Our policy is about balance, and we think this is a step in that direction.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Peter Anderson with Appalachian Voices. We wouldn't be able to support this bill if there was no meaningful engagement by communities. We wouldn't be able to support it if it didn't advance our clean energy goals. We think this bill balances that, does both, and we support the bill.
Thank you. Just identify yourself and your group. And
Susan Seward from the Virginia Forest Products Association. We support the bill, and as a supervisor from a rural county, former supervisor, I appreciate the direction this bill is going.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Patrick Cushing on behalf of the American Clean Power Association. We're large-scale utility-size solar and wind onshore and offshore developers. First we're seeing of the substitute, so this is a no position, but want to be engaged in the process going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Evan Vaughn, Executive Director of the Mid-Atlantic Renewable Energy Coalition. Like ACP, we represent utility-scale wind, solar, and storage developers. This is also the first time we're seeing this new version of the bill, so we do have some concerns about it, but we appreciate the work you're doing, what CURE has done. We're happy to engage, but there's some things we need to work out, so appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Eldon James on behalf of the Virginia Chapter of the American Planning Association. I've put this out now to our members in the last few minutes. We're the ones that are going to be staffing those local planning departments, and so we may have some more for you. We really appreciate the technical assistance aspect. That's a strong part of the bill that will help each community. We look forward to more discussion.
Thank you. Okay, we've got somebody online. Okay, please. 30 seconds.
Christopher Miller, turn on your microphone and camera.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Chris Miller from the Piedmont Environmental Council. Thank you for the opportunity to express our support for the direction of this bill. We would add one idea, which I think would help with this regional distribution issue, which is that, like traffic impact analysis, we need to evaluate the demand side of these equations. And we should have a push towards getting large energy users, 25 megawatts or more, subject to the same type of review you're making of generation. So I think that would be the better balance and would help us solve the problem. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, people that have another view, come on up, Joe.
Those online who are opposed to the bill, please raise your hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joe Lurch, representing Virginia Association of Counties, and I do want to acknowledge this is in a much better place than where we started, and we do feel like we've been heard. So I want to acknowledge that and acknowledge the work that the stakeholders were doing late last night. I'm going to couch our opposition, and like we say, we're still looking at the language, but we found two things that have us very concerned. What we heard from our members when we went out and were talking about this issue of energy planning and doing it, they would hear from them they didn't want it to be a mandate within their comp plans. When I look at this, it becomes a mandate in the comp plans and it references these targets. We're starting to get some feedback from members that that's a concern. I'll also point out on lines 121 through 126, it is putting in there, specifically on 122, and no locality shall deny any permit or special exception application for a renewable energy facility without a reasonable basis. This is a legislative act, a land use decision at the local level, and some of these things are really big. 100 megawatts is 1,000 acres. You start getting in square miles of land, and this is putting something new in state code about a reasonable basis, and so we have chief concerns with that. That being said, we continue to want to talk to everybody and the stakeholders moving forward. So I thank you. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Scott Simpson, I'm the county administrator in Halifax County, one of your rural counties. Our concern in Halifax is that we've already implemented 843 megawatts of solar in our county, which is 6% of the goal of the Commonwealth, but we're only one county out of 95. So we feel that we've reached our contribution to the Clean Economy Act. And so therefore, the Planning District Commission model works somewhat well for us, but we're concerned that that the rural areas are still going to be burdened with the majority of the solar in the Commonwealth. And so that aligns with Senator McDougal's comments earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Glenn Davis, Director of the Department of Energy. Mr. Chairman, as the department that's going to pretty much oversee this and be the division that has to make these decisions, I can understand the thought and the process here, but it has to be realistic. We've had some pretty fast texting with me and my head of the State Energy Office, my head of my Renewables Division, to see if this is even realistic. And they said, no, this is an impossible task you're giving us. If you look on lines 157 to 163 and what you're asking us to do, and basically set the goals. You're asking us to get involved in localities' comprehensive plans that are already ongoing. You're giving us a whole bunch of variables that honestly aren't really, there's no way to weigh one versus the other. I don't want to say it's going to be arbitrary, but Mr. Chairman, it's going to be relatively arbitrary. And so I can appreciate what this commission's trying to do, and I can appreciate wanting our team to do it, but it's going to be very difficult, and according to my people who have been at this agency for quite some time, and appreciate a lot of the work that this commission's done over the years. They've called this an impossible task. We were not consulted when this was put together, but happy to work with anyone on this commission or committee going forward.
And I guess you were at the CEUR meetings?
I was. So, Mr. Chairman, Senator Serville mentioned that I didn't speak at I've been at every one. I've spoken at every one. So, yes, my comments are in the minutes. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Oh, this is a new bill, so we're on this one too. Yes, sir.
Anybody else? Okay, the bill's before the committee. Okay, and motion's been made and seconded. Was there a substitute motion? Unless there's a substitute motion, please open the roll.
Ayes 9, no 6.
Ayes 9, no 6. Okay, we rise and we'll have a long afternoon Monday.